Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Targeted Lewdness Due to Roid Rage. That's right, this is the TLDR podcast. I am Daniel, that is Jeff, and we are very excited to be here today for this very special pre-Blizzcon episode. But before we get into that, Jeff, how have you been this week?
I've been alright. I mean, it's been kind of hectic, I would say. Last week I was like full 12-hour shifts every single day, so I had no time to do anything. I would get home and then just sleep, basically. But in the little increments of time that I had available to me, I somehow started and then beat Ocarina of Time on my 3DS, and that was fun. It was mostly on the Friday, like the Friday that just passed, that I really went hard on it, and it was basically like a session and a half to beat that game. And,
is it the same exact game, just ported over there, or is it like modified in any way, shortened or what have you?
It has what's it called? It has this mode that once you beat it, you can play it again on that same save file, and it flips the world. I think it's Ocarina of Time that does that. I didn't log back in to see any features. As soon as I beat it, I basically just shut it off. But it was, I believe it's mostly the same thing, because what happened in the GameCube remake is it was the Master Quest, and in the Master Quest you can choose. Oh yeah, I think it is for the 3DS. You can choose like a Master Quest mode where it flips the world. I'm not sure if it makes enemies more difficult, but you basically just get to play through the game all over again. And I've never explored that mode at all, but yeah, it's exactly the same. And always and forever, the Forest Temple remains my favorite temple, and the bottom of the well is super creepy. I really like that area too. And I would say the Gerudo Valley area is awesome. The temple there as well. It is really cool. Anyway, so I went through that game, like I blitzed it so hard, and then on Saturday I fell into a warp time period. I woke up at like 10, or no, it was like 9:30. I woke up and I was like, okay, I need to do some shopping. I need to clean my apartment. And the shopping I had to do was at South Edmonton Common and West Edmonton Mall, which these are just two different shopping centers in in Edmonton. West Edmonton Mall is pretty famous. It no longer is, but it used to be the largest mall in the world. And so, anyways, they're two really, really high population shopping centers in Edmonton, and what's really interesting is, so I woke up at 9:30-ish, I left the house at around 10 or 10:30, around there, and I got back from my shopping at around 1:30, which is stunning for the two places I had to go to. It felt like traffic was getting out of my way while I was driving. Like there was like all green lights the whole way, and nothing went wrong kind of thing.
You were Jim Carrey in that movie where he's Bruce Almighty. Yeah, and he's just like, hey, move the cars out of the way.
Basically. And then I got back home and I was like, damn, I have a lot of time to spare. And I went to clean my house and I'm like, or my apartment, and I'm like, this is going to take me probably like an hour or 2 hours. It took me like half an hour. I got everything done and I was like, what the heck happened? So then I sat down and I was like, okay, fine. That was going to be my whole day. And I was like, fine, I have all day now to play World of Warcraft. I sat down, I got my hunter from level 23 to about 34.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Holy.
I leveled up my mage from 52 to 53. And I went ham somehow on Saturday and got all that done. And
you should have bottled that energy somehow. You could have sold it and made millions. Holy.
I don't know what was happening. I kept looking at the time thinking, oh, it's going to be like 7 p.m. It's going to be like 10 p.m. And it never was. It just kept on being like 4. And I was like, what's going on? So
it's got to be 10 o'clock. It's 3:30. What?
Yeah, so I accomplished so much. Like, I can't even... It was literally like aliens were like, let's gift this man with time or something. Like, it just... Everything went right in my day, and it just, like, I'm not even kidding. It felt like, especially with my hunter, even though he's kind of low level, and at that level you can level up pretty quickly. This is still classic we're talking about, so pretty quickly is several hours. And I would sit there, and I logged in at level 23, and when next I look at the time, it was like I was like level 27, and I'm like, oh, it's got to be like 6 or 7 by now, and it was like 3 or 4, and I was like, what the heck? All right, sweet. I'm obviously doing something right. And I just dismissed it, but then later on, when I got to like level 32, level 33, and started going into dungeons and Scarlet Monastery, I looked at the time again. I'm like, oh man, it must be like 2 a.m. because it was dark out, but it was only like 7 p.m. and I was like, what am I doing? So, yeah, it was just it was insanity. And then I ran out of food on Saturday night, or Saturday period. I ran out of food in my apartment, and I was like, well, I've already gone out and done driving and everything all day. Not all day, obviously, but I just didn't have the energy to go out and pick something up. And so the only thing I have in my apartment to eat, Daniel knows this, but I tried the keto diet for about 3 months, and I didn't just do the keto diet, I went extreme with it. So I got this meal replacement mixture drink thing, like a shake, and it's a keto shake. So not only did I do a keto diet, but I also did a all liquid diet because of this shake. Because I didn't just use the shake for like the odd meal here and there. I used it for every single meal because I figured it's better for consistency. It's 100% healthy meal replacement. It covers all of your nutrients, all of your calories, everything you need. But also, not only was it consistent, but it was like price wise, it prevented me from making obscene purchases in regards to food. So anyway, so it was just a really good decision on my part at the time, and. So I bought like 3 months worth of this stuff, and the stuff lasts like a year. Like it has a really good shelf life, and I went hard on it for a month, and then after that month, I started using I think it was Wednesday as my cheat day every week, because I was getting really bored of the diet because the shake tastes pretty good, but it's kind of boring. But then I started using it Wednesday as a cheat day, so that was month 2, and then month 3 I basically did half shakes and then half normal meals, and now I'm back 100% to full meals. I'm not doing keto anymore. I'm back to my regular old crappy diet, but as a direct result of weaning myself off of it, I have like a month's supply still of the shake. So when I ran out of food on Saturday, I was like, I'll make some keto stuff. So I shook together 2 keto things, and what's really interesting about using this keto stuff like intermittently instead of like full time is it really like it messes with your mentality. Like your brain is like, hey, oh sweet, all fat, because of course keto is no carbs. And the next day I wake up and I make macaroni and cheese or something and eat just full pure carb stuff, and I'm like, I wonder what my brain's like thinking of me right now.
Just pick one, dude. Pick one.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're polluting me.
Yeah. So it's nice to have this keto stuff, and if anyone out there is like on the fence about trying keto, I say just try it. And actually, for me, I went from like a high sugar, high carb diet to keto, like cold turkey quit. And I thought I would have lots of cravings and stuff like that, but I never did. So I would just say, even though this is a gaming podcast, I just want to let you know that it didn't severely affect me in any capacity. It wasn't negative at all. If anything, it was positive. It gave me like very consistent energy levels throughout the day. It was really convenient for me.
I want to qualify this by saying that this is the guy who in our teenage years would try and see how long he could go without eating, just because he wanted to toughen himself up.
It builds character.
Yeah, so sounds like you had a pretty full weekend.
I also saw a Flat Earth documentary.
Ooh.
It was amazing.
Are you convinced?
Not at all. Because I'm not sure if you've ever seen this documentary, but like 40 minutes, it's a short one. It's only like an hour long, maybe an hour and 10 minutes. But like
What's
40, I can't remember exactly what it's called. It's like the only one out there though, because it's a Flat Earth documentary made by Flat Earthers. And there's a point where they buy this like super powerful laser pointer, and they pointed across I'm not sure if it's across a lake or something, but they set up a board on the other side of the lake, and they're like, okay, sweet. All we're gonna have to do is point this laser across the lake, and then we'll prove it that the Earth is flat because you'll be able to see it on the board. But then they couldn't see it on the board, and they were like, oh, well, that's probably because light's refracting off of the water's surface. Even though it's a laser pointer, it has specifically directed light. So then they raised the board up like 20 feet or something like that, and of course then the laser perfectly clear on this board appeared, and they're like, see, yeah, the light's refracting. And we're like, I'm like, what the hell? And then this other guy bought what are those called? The airplanes use them. Gyroscope? Is that what it is?
Yes. Airplanes have lots of parts.
It keeps it lets the pilot know if he's level. That thing.
Sounds right, actually. I think you're right.
Anyway, this gyroscopes work at any altitude, so if you're on the ground, they still work. Yeah. And so this guy bought a gyroscope, and he thought that it was being powered by satellites or something. Something external was powering it. So he put it inside of like a lead safe, and with like a window or something to observe it. And sure enough, it was still tracking a 15-degree angle change every hour, which is of course how fast the Earth spins. So when he discovered how fast the Earth was spinning, he was like, or that the Earth was spinning at all, he was like, huh, this doesn't bode well for me. I was like, yeah, no kidding. You buy a gyroscope and you expect to prove people wrong with it? Like, it's built on the premise of the Earth being a globe, right? Like, it's kind of weird. So yeah, no, that was really fun to watch. It was not at all cringeworthy, because I there's a lot of people in my life that, shockingly, that are sort of either on the edge of flat earthers or full-blown flat earthers themselves.
Yeah. Would that be called behind the curve?
Sure.
Or the biggest lie of all?
I can't remember, honestly.
No. Well, fine.
But yeah, so I watched that on either Saturday night or Sunday while I played World of Warcraft, and it was just... oh yeah, it looks like it is behind the curve. I guess it's an hour and a half. Anyway, so that was really funny to watch, especially the amount of effort they were putting into it. And I don't want to discredit. I love being an objective observer. So when it comes to flat earthers, I don't want to just poo-poo on them constantly and immediately. I'd like to listen to their point of view first. But oftentimes their point of view, I don't want to sound rude, but a lot of their times their point of view is kind of nonsensical.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences.
Sometimes it's not nonsensical.
I'm not
convinced. There's a few arguments I've seen where it's been like, oh, huh, I don't know the answer to that. But then you look up the answer and you're like, oh, well, now I understand.
Right.
So it's, yeah.
And one of the big, so we don't usually talk religion or politics, but I'm a Christian, and they say in one of the flat earthers things, that one of their big pillars, I guess, that they're basing this whole thing on, I guess, is there's a scripture in the Bible. I honestly have never encountered it myself, so take that with a grain of salt. I'm sure it's in there, I just can't remember it, where it talks about something to do with the heavens being like this great big cloak or something like that, the stars or whatever, and that to the flat earthers, they're like, see, it's right there, it's in the Bible, the sky's a dome, it's a dome. And it really bothers me that they accuse me of having no faith because I don't believe in a flat earth.
Right. So how was your week?
Yes, back on track. My week was pretty chill, actually. There wasn't a whole heck of a lot going on. Managed to get in there and play a little bit of Warcraft Classic. I checked out Five Nights at Freddy's again. The Pizzeria Simulator, played that for like another hour. Still got nowhere. The jump scares still, I mean, they still give me that initial shock where it's like, huh! But instead of being terrifying, they just make me smile. As soon as I stop, stop freaking out or stop reacting, or that quarter second of the recoil.
Do you feel tension while you're playing though?
I do, only when I'm, well, naturally, only during the times when the game is trying to cultivate tension. So like in that one point where you're like in the back room ordering supplies and stuff, I feel tension while I'm playing that, or when I'm doing that portion, or when I'm doing the reclamation process where you're trying to gather scrap off of the animatronics. But I think that's the only times in the game where they're trying to make you feel tension. So I guess the short answer is yes. Yes, it still gives me tension. But yeah, apart from that, and a couple of phone games, I have had a pretty full week at work, and hopefully everything is going to quiet down because I have a giant audit tomorrow. And then after that, hopefully everything's going to be a little bit quieter, a little bit easier to breathe, and should be ready to trek on forward. And then this weekend, we went to Grand Prairie for a friend's birthday. And on the drive there, I have my very first sports car, and I'm super proud of it. I love the thing. It's not brand new. It's new to me, but it's all I can afford. And I actually love the car very, very much. So, framing all of that, it gives you a little bit of context for how devastated I was when I had it in cruise and I was climbing a hill, climbing out of a riverbank, and all of a sudden my throttle response just like almost like a faulty wire just kind of cut in and out like 5 times in a second, like intermittently chattering right from the throttle. And I was like, what the heck is happening? And it would do it for about a second and a half, and then it would stop, and then it would surge again, and then it would stop. And I was like, what is going on? But as soon as I slowed down to 100, everything was fine. And so start speeding up to 110, it started doing that again. I was like, what is going on here? So I pulled over because check engine light came on, right? Pulled over. In my very limited knowledge, I kind of flipped open the hood and couldn't see any belts that were shredded or any smoke or steam escaping from places it shouldn't. So I was like, okay, well, I put the hood back down and continued to drive to Grand Prairie because it's a Hyundai Veloster, and there's a Hyundai dealership in Grand Prairie. So I'm like, I'll just bring it there, and they'll be able to plug in their code reader and tell me all about what's going on. Now, when I got to Grand Prairie, they didn't have time for me. I was like, are you serious? Like it's a 5-minute thing. You plug the machine in and it tells you what's wrong. No, we don't have time. I was like, okay, well, fine. So I popped across the street and went to Dodge, and they did it for me for free. So, anybody listening to this, don't go to Hyundai in Grand Prairie. They suck. They're going to regret turning me away.
Yeah, exactly. A competing company's like, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, exactly. So in my books, that's 2 strikes, you're out. They also ticked me off when I was searching for this car in the first place, but that's a story for another time. So yeah, we had a pretty good time. We did an escape room in Grand Prairie.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was neat. We failed. we did not make it. We were under the impression we had an hour, and then she only set the timer for 45 minutes. So I don't know. We were I kind of feel like we were shorted a little bit. But
did you fail spectacularly?
We didn't. We were only about. She said we were about 75-80% of the way done. After 45 minutes. So, simple math says we would have probably done it, just under the wire if we had continued with the same pace. But we were going actually really fast because for the first half hour, we couldn't figure out or the first 15 minutes, we couldn't figure out a thing.
Right.
So we were stalled dead in the water before we got our first of 18 clues. And then after that, things just kind of, with the exception of 1 or 2 5-minute sticking points, everything kind of just bing, bang, boom. So yeah, it was fun, lots of fun. I recommend, that's the word. I recommend, if anybody's curious about that at all, they're definitely worth your time. They're a lot of fun. So yeah, that was kind of my weekend, my week.
Would you recommend going in with a group of idiots or a group of like intellectuals?
Well, here's the thing: all the intellect in the world doesn't do you any good if you don't have intuition. I style myself to be a pretty book smart kind of guy, and I was dead in the water a lot of the time because I was looking at these symbols, and they made no sense to me. Like, what the heck am I supposed to do with this or that? And my wife, who is just, God bless her soul, but she is not the most book smart person, but she is just clever as all get out when it comes to, puzzles and stuff. And she was like in there like a dirty shirt. I don't think I've ever seen her so excited as she was during that process. And she was definitely our superstar. Absolutely the smartest one in the entire group. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And she was in there like a dirty shirt.
Like a dirty shirt, yeah. You've never heard that expression?
You've said it before, and I still don't get it.
In there like a pit bull on a pork chop. How's that?
That makes more sense.
Okay. I really don't know where that expression comes from. Yeah. Well, we are going to skip our general news segment because, arguably you could say our entire show today is going to cover news, if you will.
Well,
one very, very particular news story. Jeff, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say we need to delay the Halo episode for another time because BlizzCon is around the corner and we forgot about it. Well, I didn't forget about it, but like it crept up on me.
Yeah, and this hype train is real. I don't know about you, but I'm I keep expecting that my excitement for BlizzCon is going to drop off the older I get. It's going to ebb away, and I'm going to, hit that stride in my life where I'm just, middle-aged, kind of hard to excite. And I'm not there yet. At least, every single year I keep just getting super excited for BlizzCon, and this year is no different. So, yeah, how are you feeling about BlizzCon?
I think this could quite possibly be their biggest BlizzCon. Mm-hmm. Not in terms of attendance, but in terms of announcements.
It certainly has the potential to be. What are you basing that on?
Just based on, it has 6, at this point in time, this is on Monday, the 28th of October. At this point in time, they have 6 mystery panels, which is pretty huge considering how close we are to the actual event itself.
That's kind of funny because that's the very first talking point I had in my notes as well. So naturally, so I was looking through the schedule, and I found 0 opening, of course there was the opening ceremony, but I found 0 opening panels for each of the major games. So I assume that those 6 and they're all 45-minute blocks. So I assume those are going to cover, Blizzard's major games. But Blizzard has, I consider, 4 major games and like a plethora of minor games. So the real question at hand is, what are the games that they're going to cover? I mean, WoW, Overwatch, Diablo, Hearthstone, I feel like those ones are a given. But what about the other 2?
It's challenging. Oops, what the heck just happened? I'm sorry, I'm trying to open up the schedule here. It's challenging to really guess what they're, like you said, they have 4 coming soon panels in their primary stage. Right after the opening ceremony, which is kind of like, whoa, what's that all about? I think that's obviously like a block dedicated to each game. But if you go to day 2, it's the same thing. There's a few other coming soons, and you're like, well, they're obviously going to be talking about what's going on day 1, right?
I think so. Yeah.
What was your question? What are the 4 major games?
Well, I listed the 4 major games. I listed retail World of Warcraft, Overwatch, Diablo, and Hearthstone. I feel like those are their kind of their bread and butter right now.
Yes,
but that left 2. Now left 2 blocks open, two undisclosed blocks, and I just want to kind of postulate a little bit on what those could be.
The 2 from day 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they... Heroes of the Storm... Does Heroes of the Storm actually have any... Yeah, it does. On day 1, it has a 45-minute update block.
Right.
And then Hearthstone also has a 45-minute update block, which is interesting because Hearthstone is known for announcing expansions and then releasing them immediately. I don't know if they're going to do that. It makes no sense that they wouldn't announce an expansion, but I don't know how long it's been since their latest expansion or adventure mode, whatever.
Yeah, I haven't been as up to date on the Hearthstone stuff as I would like to be. I honestly, the Dalaran Heist is the newest one, right?
It's the one after that.
Oh, I didn't realize there was one after that.
Okay. There's the one where the bad guys do their thing, and then there's the Saviors of Uldum, when the heroes strike back.
Right. Okay.
It's weird that they're adding kind of story to this kind of thing because I've never even each individual adventure mode has had its own story, but I've never paid attention to the story. I've just paid attention to the innovative bosses and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've always played Hearthstone for the PvP stuff. The PvE was neat, but it's a puzzle, right? And I'm not super into puzzles, so I mean, to be fair though, the kind of build as you go deck building style where they toss up some super overpowered cards for you to choose from, I did enjoy that. That was a lot of fun because I felt it didn't really matter what deck I had at the end. I felt outrageously powerful, and it just felt good. So yeah, I hope they do more of that. Keep that coming.
Yeah, I for sure, my personal favorite expansions, I guess, from Hearthstone that I've experienced personally would be probably Whispers of the Old Gods and it just slipped out of my head. The Lich King one.
Knights of the Frozen Throne.
Yes.
That's the one I was gonna say that as my favorite. Yeah, I absolutely loved the Death Knight heroes. That was super fun.
Well, not only were they individually fun, but the Lich King campaign part was actually super difficult, super rewarding when you beat it because you got that pure Arthas portrait. It was just very nice
for your paladin. Yeah. Journey to Ungoro was pretty solid too.
It was absolutely. It just didn't feel like it had any standout super powerful cards like the Whispers of the Old Gods or Knights of the Frozen Throne.
The quest cards, right? They defined.
Oh, I forgot that was that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They defined, but they defined the play style really, right? Like they had Big Druid where you pretty much had to play into. I should be careful because I don't remember all of the decks, but.
Well, the Druid was the dude that you put him down and he creates 15 3/2s, puts them in your deck, and each one has a battle cry, draw a card.
I thought the Druid the Druid one was it gave you a big beast that you could play, and all of a sudden all of your beasts henceforth they only cost 5 mana.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the Hunter one.
Yeah. Either way, I'm interested to see what Hearthstone does. I've wanted to get back to Hearthstone for quite some time now. I just have never been able to pull the trigger and actually get started on it. There is a huge barrier to entry. So what I'm really actually hoping for Hearthstone, what I'm expecting is, of course, a new expansion. I'm expecting a new animated, kind of short and catchy, endearing rendered video that they've been, fond of doing. I expect a new PvP system, like we just mentioned, or sorry, PvE system, not PvP. But my big prediction for BlizzCon this year, or for Hearthstone at BlizzCon this year, is they need to have something huge to announce, like a tournament mode or something equally amazing, because I feel like, and this isn't just my feelings as somebody who's kind of disconnected from the game, but I'm hearing this from, podcasters that I listen to, different tournaments or whatever, shoutcasters that I've heard kind of in passing. It sounds like the community's getting a little bit tired of the same old. They're getting bored of it, even though it's new. They keep getting new expansions like every quarter. We get a new year of the insert animal here, every year. But it feels like they're getting kind of idle. So this can go one of two ways. Either Blizzard can milk all they can out of the franchise and then let it die, or they can announce something cataclysmic. But I feel like it has to happen this BlizzCon. What are your thoughts?
It's really difficult to say, because even though these protesters are rallying around fighting BlizzCon as a whole, it was the Hearthstone game that the controversy happened around. So I do feel like if they had any ace in the hole kind of thing, that they were saving for even after BlizzCon kind of thing, they might have to pull it out just to divert the negative energy to the positive energy kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I would say an expansion is definitely something to expect. More so than that, though, I've been too far away from the series myself that I can't really think of anything that they could add to make it huge. I would say that they almost need to. It's weird because, in my opinion, the standard ladder mode is too slow in its rotation. Because I would love to play ranked with Whispers of the Old Gods without having to play Wild, where everything is available. But right. I don't know how much longer I have to wait. It could be 1 year, it could be 5 years before Whispers of the Old Gods rotates back into the system. Or will it? I don't even know how it works. So it's... I almost feel like they need to have multiple varieties of standard mode or something like that to allow players to... Because obviously I have almost every card from Whispers of the Old Gods, but I have no cards from the most recent 3 or 4 expansions. So right. Me and you, we're disconnected because we're oh man, it's this huge barrier to entry suddenly. But if there was some mode where we could just go back to those old cards that we still have, instead of letting them sit there stale, it's really punishing to people who've taken a break from the game.
Exactly. If I want to get back into it and play competitive, I'm pretty well looking at a $60 investment to buy 50 packs.
Right. And that's not because of the barrier to entry. I'm discouraged yet, even more from purchasing any packs. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a self-defeating circle there.
Yeah, it's really too bad. It's too bad because it is a great game, and if that's your shtick, Hearthstone's only grown in complexity and in the endearing little things that that Hearthstone does. I almost regret that I ever quit playing it in the first place, but I had to make a choice. I didn't have time for World of Warcraft. I had time for one wife and one mistress.
Well, what's really
Warcraft was the wife, and then the mistress I was kind of two-timing between Heroes of the Storm and Hearthstone. I didn't have time for both.
The thing, if you want to compare something like Hearthstone to World of Warcraft, a huge difference is in World of Warcraft, I stopped playing retail for about a year. Maybe about 8 or 10 months for Battle for Azeroth. I took a huge window of time, stopped playing, because life got in the way, blah, 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 blah. Got bored of the game, whatever. You can name the excuses why I quit. But I actually forgot to mention this, but this week I've also been playing retail as well as classic, and I only put about 2 hours into retail. But even though I was gone for that long, and even though my still mythic gear on my healer is worse than heroic gear now because of upscaling gear and stuff like that, I still have no trouble getting through the game. Like there's nothing that's holding me back other than raiding. I can't raid, but if I want to queue for a heroic or for a LFR or something, I still meet all of the item quality parameters, so I can get into anything. I can do all the world quests on my own. All I have to do is respect a cat mode. I don't have a very good set for cat mode, but I can do it. And I still there's no barrier where I'm like, okay, well, I suddenly have to farm dungeons for gear because I can't kill these mobs. Like, there's nothing like that happening to me. And in Hearthstone, that's definitely just a sheer cliff face that you're facing when you try to get back into the game.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, a lot of the standard cards, they kind of transcend your seasons. They remain evergreen, but a lot of the powerful cards or the flavor cards or the cards that define your deck, they change from season to not season to season, but from expansion to expansion. So, like Jeff's saying, like if you fall out of rotation, fall out of the cycle, it's super tough to get back in because everything you have is just out. Not everything, but the cards that matter are just outdated.
I just realized what's also really interesting about Hearthstone is if you're a hardcore pro player, or even not even a pro player, but just a hardcore player in general, there's no problem. If you're one of us who's taken a break from the game for whatever reason, there's a huge problem. But if you're a brand new player, there's no problem. Like it's a weird dichotomy of the hardcore players and the brand new players. There's no problem because brand new players obviously start with nothing. They expect to start with nothing. But
Right.
us returning players who've invested time and money in some cases to the game, and we're basically treated as if we're brand new players with the new content. It's like a double-edged blade almost. It's very strange.
I wonder if because I think there is a system in place right now where you have to play a certain number of matches. You have to play a certain number of matches, almost like placement matches in Here's the Storm, before you get to go back in. I'm not real clear on that, but I feel like you have to play against the innkeeper or something a number of times to get you back in the flow or something.
Well, you've seen that mode now. It's not a mode. It's a feature for brand new players that they start at rank 50.
Oh?
Yeah, they start at rank 50, which of course doesn't exist. The default rank is 25 is the lowest.
25, yeah.
They start at rank 50, and I think it's either every rank or every 5 ranks they get rewarded a chest or something, or not a chest, a card pack to encourage them to keep playing. But what if you've taken a year off from the game? You don't get any kind of benefit like that. Like there's no like please come back mechanic that Hearthstone has that would reward these interim players that have decided to stop playing for whatever reason.
Yeah. So let's move on to something we both kind of profess that we know little and less about the Hearthstone situation at the moment. So let's move on to something that you do know a little bit about. And I'm talking about... Should I do it now or should I save it for last? The elephant in the room. The big, scary, demonic horned elephant in the room.
No, you definitely keep it for last. Are you kidding me?
Okay, we'll save that for last. What about StarCraft 2? Are you expecting anything more out of StarCraft than just the World Championship Series?
Let me pull up my notes here.
Wait, you had time for notes?
What do you mean?
You told me you were running behind. I thought you didn't do any notes.
I just sparsed a few here and there. No, I was running behind today, but I got notes on my phone throughout the week. So you know how they were like the horrible but big announcement last year was Diablo Immortal because they wanted to break into the mobile market, even though
Right.
Hearthstone is already a huge impact on the mobile market. I guess they wanted a bigger impact. Whatever. If they wanted to go mobile, from World of Warcraft at least, there's pet battles that are very easily translated onto the small screen. Um, it's weird that it hasn't happened yet. And World of Warcraft, I know Blizzard always describes themselves as being very focused on quality, 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 and so they don't want to push a product until it's absolutely finished. And that's been definitely the case in the past, where players get annoyed with them because they wait so long before releasing something, and then when they do release something, it's as good as they promised it to be. But there are some things that just don't add up. Like WoW Classic took. I don't know how many people they had working on WoW Classic, but it felt like it took way too long to. I mean, it's a glorious rendition of the original, but it felt like it took way too long. And I feel like
Yeah, didn't it release 3 years after they announced it?
something like that. It was either 2 or 3 years. But then the pet battle system, I would like to see it on the mobile because I would definitely play it more, or even especially if it like affected my in-game characters for achievements or item rewards and stuff like that. I would absolutely play it if it was on mobile. And the thing is if they did announce it, I would fear that it would take like a year or two before it actually came out on mobile. And it's just these weird, huge gaps of time for small things. However,
Well, it might be a little too late at this point.
it entirely possible. I don't know how popular pet battles still are, but every time I play the game, there's somebody out there pet battling. So I have no idea. But what about a story-focused, not pet battles, as a mobile game? That's not Warcraft. That's not Hearthstone. What about a story-focused, character-driven side game for StarCraft? As Mario has worlds that you conquer, this game would have like each world focus on a character and their dealings, their storylines, etc. Because there's a lot of characters at the end of Legacy of the Void, which is the third iteration, the third expansion pack for StarCraft 2, that they have their ending, but there's a lot of them that are just really badass characters. So you get this side story of Nova in StarCraft 2. Nova is a cool character in Heroes of the Storm, but she's a super duper side character in the RTS. She's
Right.
in the game, but she's so much of a tertiary character that you don't really think about her ever.
Right.
Unless she's on the screen. So like there's other characters, especially there's I'm forgetting his name, Alarak. Alarak is a badass character, and he's in Heroes of the Storm, he's in StarCraft 2, and it would be awesome to have this like hyper focused story character like driven. It can either be like visual novel style, it could be a third person over the shoulder, I'm walking around as Alarak doing things. It doesn't really
Yes.
matter what the platform or what the format is, but some sort of, because the StarCraft always seems to be focused on storytelling. It would be awesome to see little increments of character stories in a mobile
Yeah.
version.
Do you think they visit Raynor and Kerrigan, or do you think they leave that alone where it ended?
Well, Kerrigan had a weird ending. And I know Raynor sort of merged in with that, but what did you just
Yeah.
do? Did you just undo your belt buckle?
What? No.
I heard a weird belt noise, man. It was creepy.
I think I'm wearing a hoodie with a metal zipper, and I think it just rubbed against the table here.
I hope so.
Yeah, you can relax, rest easy. Back to Kerrigan.
But yeah, no, I think that would be, other than announcing a StarCraft 3 where they go in a completely different direction, because obviously all the characters from StarCraft 2 are kind of like finito. They could either jump forward in time or backward in time to tell a different story or whatever. It doesn't have to be as grand scale as StarCraft 2 was, or I guess StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2 together were the same story, but it could be its own little side thing. I don't know, but I feel like there's a lot of potential for continuing the RTS, because StarCraft as an RTS is like one of the last remaining games for that genre. Like, there's not very many successful games in that genre, and I feel like it's Blizzard is almost doing not themselves but everyone else a disservice by not continuing the RTS format. So
well, I mean, I don't feel like the appetite is really that big for it right now. At least not in North America. I really have no idea how things are in Korea. But if they did announce a StarCraft 3 or a continuation of that franchise, I mean, pretty much every 30-year-old Korean is just going to melt into a puddle. Well, with excitement.
My only trepidation with it is the fact that I would be super excited for a StarCraft 3, but without any idea where they would take the story, I'm also kind of nervous, cautious about it. A mobile announcement for StarCraft, I think, would be remarkable, because the real downfall of Diablo Immortal is that the graphic style, the art, the abilities, everything you can do in the mobile version, you can already do in the currently existing, and still, quote unquote, current Diablo 3 game.
Right.
But StarCraft 2, other than its cooperative mode, which is awesome, I hate that none of my friends play cooperative StarCraft 2, because it's super easy, and it's a very casual game. It's fun to play. It's easy to be overpowered in that. But other than that mode, which isn't a very big mode in the game, there's not much action going on in StarCraft. So it feels like StarCraft needs some sort of oomph or push behind it. I'm not sure if we're going to get it at BlizzCon. I would say 10-1 odds that we're not going to see any StarCraft involvement.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard a couple of leaks here and there. You know, there's some rumblings. Sometimes leaks sometimes they're not even accidental, or not even accidental, but sometimes they're not even nefarious. They're actually orchestrated leaks. And we know of, like, some rumblings in Overwatch. We know of some rumblings in Diablo. I have heard nothing from StarCraft 2, StarCraft franchise whatsoever.
The only thing I've heard is they canceled a not StarCraft Ghost, a separate first-person shooter from the StarCraft universe. They canceled it for another project, another unknown project. I don't know how long ago they canceled it. I don't know if this was a year ago or 5 years ago, but there was a second first-person shooter for StarCraft that was also canceled.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's in relation to something that's happening at this BlizzCon, but I read that earlier this week.
A first-person shooter set in the StarCraft universe. That could be fun. That could be a lot of fun. Yeah. Moving on to the next kind of not quite headliner. I want to talk Warcraft 3.
Okay.
So we're most likely going to get a Warcraft 3 Reforged release date. I'm expecting that release date. I'm expecting an art reveal, a deep dive into remaking the game or something of that nature. I don't remember seeing a heck of a lot of time carved out for Warcraft 3. Do you think there's any chance that one of those headliner 45-minute blocks is going to be dedicated to Warcraft 3?
I think so.
You think there's a chance?
Of the mystery blocks or of all the blocks?
Of the mystery blocks.
No. I don't think so.
No?
Just because they have, this is common in the game development industry, but they have outsourced their the Warcraft 3 Reforged game to a Malaysian art design team. Like I said, it's common, but the downfall of that is Malaysia designs a lot of mobile games, and if you look at the Reforged art designs of like the just normal like peons and stuff like that, they look startlingly like a lot of those like Korean mobile games that exist right now. And they don't look at all like their old counterparts. They look obviously high def, but they don't look like Warcraft has always been known for being very cartoonish, and it looks too much on the side of realistic. Like Warcraft has always been known for having gigantic pauldrons and stuff like that. And though the pauldrons are still giant on the characters, they have like normal-sized heads and proportionate bodies, so it doesn't look like extremely like unnatural. And you'd want it to look unnatural because that's what Warcraft 3 looked like. Like it's weird that they're
it really hyperbolized the size of the orcs and the size of the armor. You're absolutely right.
Like before the orcs were like short and stout, and now they're tall and they're a bit they're still muscular, but they're like slender muscular. They're lean. Mm-hmm. Same with the humans. The humans were stout and wide, and now they're tall and like properly proportioned. And so I need to stress that the new models don't look bad. They just don't look like I would imagine them to look like based on their predecessors.
Right.
So I'll probably play the game. I wasn't looking forward to realistic. I was just looking forward to, and I know it's not a remaster. It's a remake. So there are some creative liberties that I should expect to happen. But so like the structures that I've seen in screenshots and stuff look awesome. They look remarkable. They look like perfect HD remakes of their Warcraft 3 versions. But the character models are just, especially for the humans and orcs, the Tauren look pretty accurate. The monsters look pretty accurate. I saw a picture of a goblin. He looks pretty accurate. It's just the orcs and humans are off to me.
Well, and then as soon as you see the models moving too, that might bring it all home for you as well. Just how they move, how they run, how they fight, might kind of tickle that nostalgia thing. Now, what do you think the odds are that they're going to be like, yeah, Warcraft 3, you can play it today?
Ooh.
You know how they like to do that and just drop this huge bomb and make everybody cheer?
They would definitely get a lot of karma points for doing that because they've already delayed the release of Reforged at least once, maybe twice at this point. So yeah, that would be a huge boon for them if they did. But seeing how we've seen like no extra like screenshots or videos or anything of the game, it's, in my opinion, it's kind of unlikely that would be happening.
Yeah. The internet still says release date of 2019 though, when we're running out of time. So
yeah, exactly.
If they don't say today, or rather on the 1st or what have you, I do expect it, for at the very latest, holiday 2019.
Yeah. I even though Warcraft 3 is one of my favorite games as a child, or as like a preteen, I don't know how old I was when that game came out, but even though it's one of my favorites, I didn't buy Reforged because of the whole classic stuff. Like they announced classic and people got hyped up the wazoo and then had to wait for 2 or 3 years. The same thing's happening with Reforged, so I just haven't bought it, even though it has a really badass mount in World of Warcraft and stuff like that. I can't be arsed, essentially.
What's the price point on that?
On Reforged?
Bucks? Yeah, $25, something like that.
I can check right now. It is loading. It's $50. It's $50 for the
$50
for the Spoils of War edition, which have all the in-game stuff, and then the standard edition is $40.
Huh.
Canadian.
So it's pretty steep, right? There's going to be an investment in there. It's almost a AAA title, so yeah. So that's interesting.
It sucks because if they say it's coming out right now, they need to leave like a 1 week or at least or even a 1 month window of time for people to quote unquote pre-purchase the game, because otherwise Blizzard themselves are going to lose a lot of money for releasing it before people can get the Spoils of War edition or whatever. But that's neither here nor there. I'm neither am I overly excited nor am I let down by Reforged. I'm just patiently waiting.
Yeah. It'll be interesting anyways. I am looking forward to seeing what they have to say. I do expect to see like art, their art design or music design or something like that, where they had to go back to the very roots and rebuild it from the ground up. Blizzard likes to show off that kind of stuff at their cons.
They do, and what's actually really interesting about the art assets, at least of Warcraft 3, is they were hugely inspirational for art assets in World of Warcraft. So if you look at old Warcraft 3 art assets of like a barracks building or an armory building, and then you look at World of Warcraft's version of those buildings, it's like a shot-for-shot remake. But if you look at the reforged versions of those same buildings, it looks sufficiently different that it doesn't look like the Warcraft 3 version or the World of Warcraft version. So it's like a departure from what I would expect to see. And so it's that kind of thing that that it sort of kills my excitement, but it doesn't make me disappointed either. It's just it's different in a way I wasn't expecting.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe it's because nobody of course knows what the franchise is gonna look like 20 years in the future, right? But so I'm talking Warcraft 3 when it was made, or I guess it was made 30 years ago?
Warcraft 3?
Yeah.
No. Like 20 years.
What? Oh, was that all? I thought it had been out for 15 years before Warcraft released. Or was that the interval between Warcraft 1 and World of Warcraft?
Warcraft 3 released in 2002.
Okay.
So not even 20.
Not even quite 20 years. Still though, nobody knows what the art or the general spirit of the game is going to look like, 20 years in the future. And I feel like the game has kind of just outpaced that art style. So when they remaster or reforged or whatever, they're probably staying more true to the style of the game, of the World of Warcraft game today, rather than just remastering. Like you said, it's a reforged, not a remaster of the previous
remake,
iteration.
Not a remaster.
Right.
Yeah. Like if this is a bit of a departure, just but for comparison's sake, Final Fantasy VII is being remade, which basically means they're not using any assets from the old game. They're rebuilding the game from the ground up. And Warcraft 3 Reforged, when they showed that demo, I don't know how long ago that demo was, but when they showed the demo of the culling, that was a remake of the, or not a remake, that was a remaster of the culling. And I think the whole Reforged thing is that it's a remake. So a remaster is building on already existing assets, and a remake is building anew.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that should be fun. You ready to move on?
Sure.
Let's talk some Heroes of the Storm, shall we? Kind of the last contender, in my opinion, for the those infamous unknowns. At the top of the show, we talked about those 2 slots. What?
Let's pause.
Okay.
Not pause the podcast.
Let's pause on Heroes of the Storm for a minute.
Yes. I pulled up my notes and I saw something else I had written for Warcraft Reforged. One thing I do know that they're doing with Warcraft Reforged is they are actually they're they're adding chronologically cohesive events to Warcraft Reforged's campaign to make sense with WoW's story, such as Arthas hearing voices when he's wandering through Northrend, something that he doesn't experience in the original Warcraft 3, but he will in Reforged to make it a little bit more sensical with the World of Warcraft story.
I see. Oh, that's neat. That's a nice touch.
Yeah, and off of that, I was thinking maybe at this BlizzCon, not only would they announce an actual release date, hopefully a very soon-to-be release date for Warcraft Reforged, but that they would also apply the same treatment to Warcraft 1 and 2. Because you can't remaster like Warcraft 1, it's too old. You'd have to rebuild the whole thing.
Right.
But to have that on the back burners saying, hey, it's going to come eventually, we're just letting you know that it's going to happen. It would just be something that it's like a backup plan that like 2 years, maybe 5 years down the line, people are like, okay, we're bored of this Blizz, and Blizz says, hey, remember 5 years ago when we said Warcraft 1 and 2? And the fans would be like, oh yeah, okay. Sort of, I think it might be reaching too much, but I feel like something like that would be like an amazing announcement.
Well, and our generation is kind of we're the big first video gamer generation, right? And our generation is getting to the point now in our 30s and 40s where we've actually got some expendable cash where we can drop into, our passions, and they're really playing on the nostalgia factor. And it's not just Blizzard. I mean, like you're saying, Final Fantasy is getting a remake. There's a whole ton of games out there that are getting remade, reforged, redone, remastered, and I feel like they're aware of this market of, maybe just a one and done experience. Maybe you'll play it a few times, but you want to go back and relive that initial experience and get those, those chills that you got, the first time that you stepped into Northrend or whatever. And I could definitely. Did they actually go so far as to announce that they were remaking Warcraft 1 and 2?
No, that's what I'm predicting.
I could definitely. I'm in full agreement. I could definitely see them doing that.
If they're going to touch on anything, Warcraft Reforged, I think they should also announce like Warcraft 1 and 2. Look forward down the pipeline kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brief aside, I don't have this in my notes, but did you see the BlizzCon 2019 banner graphic?
Banner?
Sorry, if you can hear my keys clicking.
Oh, yeah. I most definitely can.
So if you Google search BlizzCon 2019 banner graphic, and you pull up the first photo that pulls up on Google, where it shows like the yellow virtual ticket in the center.
Okay, yeah.
You've got, if you start in bottom left, you've got your Hearthstone girl, whatever her name is. You've got looks like Tychus, and who's this?
It's Here's the Storm guy.
Here's the Storm, Medivh.
If that's Medivh, he's done things to himself.
Oh no, that's not Medivh. That's the Raven Lord.
Oh,
that's
okay.
Orpheus' dad.
Yeah.
And then who's that orc? I know he's from World of Warcraft, but that's supposed to be the World of Warcraft. No.
Isn't that Sarfang's jaw armor thing?
I mean, it doesn't really look like Sourfang, but I'll allow it. Then we've got Diablo, and then we've got this Overwatch. Who is this? Soldier 76? Is that who they call that?
Yeah.
Or is that?
No, that's McCree.
McCree. But then we have this big conspicuous open spot, in the bottom where nothing is happening, and I'm curious. I feel like they're adding a new IP here, that there's going to, kind of like they did when they announced Overwatch. Bam! There's this brand new banner that they turn the lights on to, and all that stuff, and all of a sudden this previous graphic that they had, now it has this additional person, and I think it was Tracer. Was it Tracer that now they just fit Tracer in, and all of a sudden the graphic is complete again. You're like, oh man, I didn't even know it was missing Tracer. I feel like that's going to happen again to this one. I don't know exactly. Overwatch has some pretty cool announcements that got leaked that we'll be talking about in a little bit, and maybe that has to do with that empty space. But I just wanted to. I don't know why I wanted to bring that up. I just wanted to talk about it because I was thinking about it and it wasn't in my notes.
I don't think you know what Starfang looks like.
Well, I know what he looks like in the fully rendered cinematics.
That looks exactly like him, though.
Yeah, you know what?
He has the pierced teeth and the
Yeah.
ponytail.
I get a little bit closer. I'm looking at a pretty small picture on my screen, but when I blow it up a little bit, I get a little closer. I can see you're probably exactly right. I didn't really like that it was Sourfang because spoilers. Sourfang at this iteration, at this point in OG WoW, he's or not OG, but retail WoW, he's no longer in the picture. So I don't really like that it's Sourfang, but I guess it's probably the best icon for Warcraft representation right now. Certainly not Anduin, and it's definitely not Sylvanas. So, yeah.
Yeah, that Sourfang reveal at the end of his storyline was exceptionally disappointing. All that build up.
So?
Oh, I didn't like it at all.
Huh. Well, that's too bad. I'm at this point. I'm a little bit disconnected from the retail games, so it didn't hit me. I think like it should have.
I mean, it was. I felt the impact of the scene itself, but the culmination was just disappointing. That's all. Anyway,
I kind of feel like Anduin's story is going to get a springboard off of this because of that one comment made between them where Anduin says to Sourfang, he says, "I put you on this journey," and then Sourfang looks back at him and says, "Then walk with me the rest of the way." And I'm like, oh, so this isn't the rest of the way. This might be the end of Sourfang's journey, but this is not the end of Anduin's journey. And I feel like this is going to eat at him, and he's gonna do something. I don't know. It's going to be hopefully inspirational because I've always wanted to. I always have loved Anduin, but he does get a lot of bad. I mean, and rightly so. He gets a lot of negative attention because he doesn't do a heck of a lot, you know.
Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah. I wanted to. I was going to transition into Heroes of the Storm. Yeah. So, HOTS. A couple of days ago, we got a pretty big announcement. I say a couple of days, but it's more like 5 days. And by the time our listeners hear this, it'll be like a week or something.
Yeah, just for our listeners, no. By the time you're listening to this episode, BlizzCon will have already happened. So we'll do the post-show analysis as well. But just for this instance, just know that we know nothing at this moment.
Yes, indeed. So if you have seen BlizzCon and you're listening to this, please have a good laugh at our expense for how wrong we are, or raise a glass for how correct we
at
are.
Our brightness.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. So Deathwing, the character we've been crying about and clamoring after for years and years, is finally hit the Nexus. Man, does this character look cool, and he has some pretty stinking sweet gimmicks. This isn't a Heroes of the Storm show, so I'm not going to get super granular about it, but suffice it to say that Deathwing is every bit as badass in Heroes of the Storm as he is in World of Warcraft, if you've played World of Warcraft. I mean, he's classified as a bruiser, so he's not a tank, he's not a damage dealer, he's kind of halfway in between. He has the highest health pool in the entire game, so he kind of knocks Azmodan off that.
Wait,
off
more than
that
Cho'Gall?
perch. More than Cho'Gall.
Wow.
But there's a trade-off. He has the largest hitbox. He has a bigger hitbox than Azmodan, and anybody who's ever played Chromie knows that you can hit Azmodan from a country mile away. So he's got the largest hitbox, the most HP, and from what I've been reading, he cannot be healed by any other player.
Okay.
so no healer can touch him. But the trade-off for that, so it's kind of a give and take character. The trade-off for not being able to be healed is that he's permanently immune to stun, slow, and roots.
Okay.
So he's unstoppable. Unstoppable, can't be healed, has a large hit pool, but he gets hit easily. So, I mean, it's an interesting character. I think he's pretty sweet. I did get to see some actual gameplay, and he can take a licking. My goodness, he just like gets kind of like Cho'Gall, where like 3 people will just converge on him and just hit him with everything they've got, and they've got all of their stuff is on cooldown. They've run out, and Cho'Gall just keeps coming. That's what Deathwing was looking like, and he had a very the Diablo Apocalypse ultimate where he just blows flame. Deathwing, I think that's one of his main attacks. His whatever QWE attacks is a very similar gout of flame.
Is he like Alex Straza, where he has a humanoid form, or is he constantly in dragon form?
That's the next thing I was going to talk about. He, from what I can tell, is constantly a dragon. He does not switch to human form.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so he's different from Alex Straza. I don't know how mobile he is, like if he's going to be able to like get up and fly around or something. That would be kind of neat. Or if he had kind of a
one
Ragnaros.
I'm actually just looking at his just screenshots, but one of his heroics, his wings turn into fire and he just like flies down the lane kind of thing.
Yeah, I was just thinking like almost like a mini Ragnaros where you can just charge the lane and just do a pile of damage.
Also a tile of damage.
It's true. Yeah. So Deathwing looks pretty stinking cool. I'm very excited to get into the game and give him a try. So I guess that raises the question: if we got, just 5 days ago, if we got this big announcement here for Deathwing, and did they just blow their wad and they don't have anything for BlizzCon? They like, oh shoot, we ran out of stage time, we ran out of hall time or what have you. What do we cut? Heroes. We'll just release this early, and we'll have nothing to announce because we need extra time for this other thing that we're planning. Is that what's happening? Are we going to get nothing, or do we get another gigantic reveal and maybe a recommitment to developing the Heroes of the Storm game?
I will tell you what I would want to see. I actually completely forgot that Deathwing was announced just a little while ago. But what I was expecting out of Here's the Storm, you know how we got Cho'Gall? And he was immediately given to all the ticket purchasers of that BlizzCon that he was announced at. And then the way people unlocked him was by playing Gall when somebody else chose somebody who owned the Cho'Gall character, and then it spread like wildfire. That's how people earned Cho'Gall as a playable character. I think they should because they've always gotten along that vein of being like a little bit more extreme than the other MOBA games, and of course they don't take themselves nearly as seriously. I would say that it could be a Nexus character, because I'm not sure if this really exists in any of the games. It could be a StarCraft character. You know how one of Tassadar's ultimates in Heroes of the Storm allows him to become an Archon?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not sure how much you know about StarCraft lore, but that's impossible. That is, like, you can't... What's that race called? Holy crap. What are they called? Protoss. One Protoss character cannot become an Archon. An Archon requires 2 Protoss merging together.
Okay.
So in the vein of Cho'Gall requiring 2 players to play, I think it'd be really cool if they introduced 2 characters that are individual, but one of their ultimates, if chosen, is the ultimate for both of them, and it merges them together into like a super beast of some sort. So the 2 characters can wander around on their own. Maybe they're not necessarily super weak, and then maybe they complement each other a lot. So that maybe it's better for them to be in the same lane as each other, etc. But it would be really neat to have this like a Cho'Gall-esque character where anybody who purchased the ticket gets that character, and then it spreads like wildfire from there. And I think it's a really creative way of playing the game, because Cho'Gall is a huge advantage and a huge disadvantage for your team. But if you have a joint set of characters that are really, really, like, you have to play them together, but they're not stuck together on the battlefield. It sort of takes Cho'Gall's advantage or disadvantage and sort of diminishes it, but they would be maybe less tanky than Cho'Gall, this kind of thing. I think something like this, it doesn't have to be exactly that, but it would have to be something that's crazy and goofy, but also really badass, that makes people want to play Heroes of the Storm. Because the only time that, like, people who play World of Warcraft or Hearthstone or StarCraft, the only time they really come to Heroes of the Storm is if there's a promotion in Heroes of the Storm that rewards an item for their game.
Yeah, I'd argue that the events get quite a few people playing too, like the Halloween event or the Christmas event or whatever. Those get quite a few playing as well. But barring those things, yeah, people, because I think Heroes of the Storm is not the game. Like I talked about the wife and mistress analogy a little while ago. I think Heroes of the Storm is not hardly anybody's number one game. It's not their primary game. You know, maybe it's the game that they cheat on their primary game with every now and then, but it's not their number one game for most people.
Right.
Yeah. So they need something that's gonna breathe some good life into it if they want it to become, you know, if they see it actually becoming or the potential for it to be that primary game, they definitely need to work on it for sure. So what I'm hoping for BlizzCon is very, you know, very expansive, something groundbreaking, something earth-shattering, you know, like they did Heroes 2.0 a little while ago, something similar to that, where they breathe fresh life into the game, put a great big team of really talented people in that game, and actually make a good run of it. You know, bring back HGC and all that stuff, as long as we're dreaming in color. But I fear what we'll actually get is maybe a new map, maybe a new game mode, but most likely just a new map, new skins, new mounts. Nothing really fresh or innovative or invigorating, unfortunately.
Now, I know you really liked HGC, but competitive environments in games are really, really, really expensive to maintain. And if Heroes of the Storm just wasn't bringing in the cash, then maybe they were in the right to do that,
Sure.
so they could focus their assets on the game itself.
Yep, absolutely. I understand that, and I feel like the game is probably better for it since they got rid of HGC, because you're able to get some, like, your balance is way different when you don't have to balance for the pro scene, right? So,
right.
I mean, you can actually have Nazebo scale up into infinity with his health because of just lane clear, where you couldn't have that on the pro scene. That was, you know, that would just be gamed, and then Nazebo would be the number one tank and picked all the time or banned all the time, and that's boring for the viewers.
Yeah. Yeah. But for Heroes of the Storm, I like you said, because the Deathwing announcement, and he is kind of an obscene character like Ragnaros, kind of crazy. I don't, other than the already established Heroes of the Storm panels, I don't foresee any of the mystery panels being Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah. Yeah, I want it to be, but I doubt it.
Right.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
So up to this point,
this
point so far, I would say Hearthstone probably has one of those mystery panels of the games we've talked about so far.
On day 2, you think?
I don't know which day, but they're going to announce an expansion. Yeah,
I had slated day 1 to be World of Warcraft, Overwatch, Diablo, and Hearthstone. Those are the four on day 1 that are the mystery panels, and then the 2 on day 2 are the ones that are kind of up in the air. I'm not sure about.
Now, what's really difficult about my prediction here, before we move on to other games to cover, just concerning the mystery panels, is It's difficult to make this prediction because the entire event is so well mapped out already. But one of my predictions is that one of those mystery panels will be a brand new IP. And if it's a brand new IP, obviously it would need some further panels to elaborate for it. But there aren't very many other further panels, right? So.
Right, unless, I mean, we do get quite a few further panels that are already game specific. So, like, you'll get, a day 2 Overwatch panel, or a day 2 whatever Warcraft panel, something that's already, but they don't really tell you exactly what's going on in there. So what could be happening too is we could have a spin-off, we could have a successor to one of these that's announced in day 1 and then revisited on day 2, exactly like you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. I want to now move on to World of Warcraft, because I feel like that's the next one in line for hype, for the general hype machine. Now, I absolutely love World of Warcraft.
Whoa.
What?
You don't want to talk about all of them first?
All of what?
World of Warcraft, I have like 8 million years of notes on. You want to cover that before Overwatch or Diablo?
I do. And the reason why is because I feel like Overwatch and Diablo both have maybe not more to talk about, but more exciting news than World of Warcraft does. But I mean, I'm pretty fluid. We can push it off to the back if you want. Actually, that might be better.
Yeah.
Might be better because we probably will ramble on World of Warcraft.
We're good at that.
We're both giant nerds. So, okay, you've convinced me. We'll push World of Warcraft off to the back, and let's go over to Overwatch next. So, naturally, we're going to have the Overwatch World Cup, right? Which is like their kind of culmination of the esports scene. But Jeff, have you seen what was leaked just a few days ago in the Overwatch IP?
The Overwatch 2?
Yeah.
That's it, right? Overwatch 2?
Yeah, well, I was waiting for No, I was expecting a little bit more hype or a little bit more something from you than just Overwatch 2.
I just I don't know how Overwatch can have a sequel. Like it feels
that's
like
the question of the hour, isn't it?
It feels like the kind of game that can just expand endlessly. Even if they wanted to attach a campaign mode, they could just add it onto the main game. So it's weird to me that Overwatch 2 is more than likely a thing.
Yeah. Well, an Overwatch League is huge, right? How do they thread them together, right? They can't very well can Overwatch 1 and leave Overwatch League, right, to kind of flounder and then expect everybody to port over to Overwatch 2. So here's the picture I'm kind of building in my head. So the notes here I said I wrote that it's a
it's a
successor. Yeah, I did. Yeah,
right here. My gosh.
It's a successor or a spin-off of the original Overwatch, meant to exist in tandem with the game and not to supplace it or supplant it or overthrow it or what have you.
Supplace it. Well chosen.
I can English. Replace. That's the word I was looking for.
No, hold on. Let's look up supplace. I'm not. It shows up on Wiktionary.
There you go. Moving on before we reveal how stupid I am. So I don't remember where it was that I had read this, and I don't have it in my notes, but I'm pretty sure I read that it was commented on by actual Blizz devs and not just a bunch of people postulating. but it's in the original game, the Overwatch archives, I guess, is a PvE mode, and the dev comment on that was that it was going to be something very similar in spirit to the Overwatch archives. So what I'm expecting is a game, a story-driven PvE game, which exists to add backstory, to add, like you said, like a PvE, almost like you said, a game mode that you could add, but something that's so vast and so expansive that they figured that it wasn't right to just add it, just slap it onto an existing game. Like, it's an entirely different game. It took, millions and millions and millions of dollars to make this thing, and I feel like that's the direction they're going to go.
Yeah, I would generally agree. Like I said, I don't know why it has to be specifically a sequel title, rather than an add-on to the existing game. But I will say that every time they release, I don't play, for those watching at home or listening at home, I don't play Overwatch at all. I own the game, and I've played maybe 8 hours of it. It was a purchase that honestly I regretted, because I'm not a super... I don't like playing video games competitively. I'm a very competitive person in general when it comes to like work and performing better than others, or playing physical sports, or even just like tabletop games. Like what's that game that Braden had at his house? That football game, foosball. Games like that just they're not necessarily physically exhausting for me, but they're still like, just the physical aspect of it just makes it a little bit more investing for me. When I'm playing a video game, I don't feel that competitive level. So that's why Overwatch doesn't interest me. But despite that, every single time they release a video, like a story video of one of the characters in Overwatch, it's, first off, it's remarkably produced. But second off,
goodness.
It brings me so much into the universe of Overwatch that I'm like, oh my gosh, I want more! So
yeah, their story team is fantastic.
Yeah, the idea of a campaign mode is like so awesome that I will definitely buy it, even though I don't like the competitive side of things.
Exactly, and I don't think that you're alone in that. I think that I think that there's a lot of people out there that have the same general feeling. So yeah, absolutely, bring it on. They also talked about a new map type called Push. What that means, I really have no idea. I imagine it's
like tug a rope, but like opposite. You have a rope and you're just pushing it into the other person, and that's how you win.
Yeah. Okay. When
the other person just gets over pushed.
Are you pulling that out of your butt, or are you actually being serious?
I'm pushing it out of my butt.
All right. Is that what the smell is? They also talked about 2 new maps. So there's going to be a Toronto map. Ha ha ha, as Canadian. Also a Rio de Janeiro map.
Ooh, Brazil.
Yeah, Brazil, yeah. So the Toronto one,
You didn't know that was in Brazil, did you?
I most certainly did.
You're stupid.
Thank you for that. No, the Toronto map is the push map. We're not really sure what the Rio de Janeiro map is going to be, what map style is going to be. I imagine that's going to probably get announced and gone over at length at BlizzCon. Now, they also announced, or leaked, I'm not sure if I can call it an announcement or a leak or what have you, but that there's going to be in the new game talents and items, which is, of course, a departure from the original iteration where there is no items beyond maybe, I'm not sure, can you pick up grenades?
I don't think so. I think it's just cosmetic stuff.
Okay, so yeah, talents and items did not exist in the original game, and they will exist in Overwatch 2. So
now, again,
PvP maybe, PvE maybe. It could go either way at this point.
We do need to say that the game was leaked. We don't actually know cold hard details yet. But if there is a story mode, then I would say that more than likely there's going to be some sort of RPG element or inventory system for sure.
Yeah. Now, here's why I think it's not going to replace Overwatch, original Overwatch, is because Overwatch League 2020 was just previewed. So they, at least for the 2020 season, they do intend to keep Overwatch League going. So obviously the original Overwatch League is going nowhere fast. They're not intending to overthrow it with this new successor.
Why would the sequel have to overtake it?
Well, it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. But with everybody's spirit of, wanting to have the newest and biggest and best, it's exactly why World of Warcraft isn't producing another MMORPG Blizzard isn't producing another MMORPG because then they would be competing with themselves for the same market. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it doesn't make business sense.
Well, I'm just saying, from what I've heard about Overwatch 2 so far, is that it is campaign. It's not going to have a competitive PvP. That'll be left to Overwatch 1, while Overwatch 2 is left to the PvE experience. That's what my takeaway was from it. I didn't read any articles other than a few just bullet points.
Yeah, time will tell. It'll be interesting, though. Oh, pardon me. So yeah, that's all I have for Overwatch. Let's move on, and I'm going to lean heavily on you for this one because my experience with this franchise is pretty limited. Let's move on to Diablo. How are you feeling about Diablo this BlizzCon versus BlizzCons in the past?
Oh, I mean, it's a foregone conclusion that Diablo 4 is going to be announced, just because it wasn't announced at last BlizzCon because they felt it wasn't ready. But if a
was
year
that
is
confirmed by anybody?
I'm pretty sure Blizzard confirmed it. I have no source to direct you to at this moment, but I believe that's how it happened. But I would say that Diablo 4 is definitely in the works, but also that, just like my Warcraft 1-2 prediction, I think the Warcraft 1 and 2 remake thing is not very likely, but I'm hopeful. I think the Diablo 2 remake is not a hopeful thing. I think that's a pretty likely chance of happening, just because it's just like Warcraft 3, Diablo 2 was easily the peak of their early days for the Diablo franchise. Like, Diablo 1 was pretty good. Diablo 3 had hosts of problems, but Diablo 2 was super duper solid. And it only makes sense in their current state of turmoil with Diablo to announce as many good things as you possibly can for it. So just pair the Diablo 4 announcement with a Diablo 2 remake, or not remake necessarily, but like a remaster announcement would be just phenomenal. What's really exciting about Diablo 4 is if it's going to continue the story of Diablo 3. Now, all of the Diablos sort of continue off of each other, but at the end of Diablo 3, your character sort of realizes not necessarily the futility of their quest, but it sort of leaves things ambiguous with which side your character leans towards at the end, which might open up the concept of playing a character for the bad team, not just the good team. Because every Diablo up until now, you're the hero defeating Diablo, who is of course the Lord of Hell, and it's sort of it's very foreshadowy about how your character may get the choice in Diablo 4 to side on Diablo, the Diablo side of things, rather than on like team with hell rather than team with heaven, essentially.
That sounds very cool. I've always liked games that let you kind of explore both sides of the same coin. Like I'm thinking Fable, the original Fable, how you could choose to be good or evil, and doing evil things enabled certain things, but it also closed you off to other parts. And doing good things, did the same thing. It enabled you to accomplish these tasks, but not those ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Mass Effect is the same thing.
There's definitely room for somebody to explore that in the Diablo franchise.
I wouldn't say the Diablo franchise would experience or visit that concept in the same way. Obviously, in Mass Effect and in whatever you just said.
Fable?
Fatal?
Fable.
Oh, Fable. Yeah. I'm like, Fatal? What the? Fable and Mass Effect are both very character-driven. It very much relies on your character making choices. Of course, Diablo is essentially a shoot 'em up. What would you call that? Hack and slash? It's so supremely action that story sort of takes a back seat. Even though there's intense story in Diablo, it takes a back seat to the action, and I would say you would only be hurting Diablo 4 by trying to push story to the forefront, but allowing your character to choose a side is still a super exciting prospect. What's really interesting about Diablo in general, I'm not sure if you knew this, Daniel, but it's really interesting to watch the BlizzCon panels from yesteryears, because they really go into how much they've drawn inspiration from like every religion in the world. So Diablo isn't just a recreation of, or like a fictional universe of Christian belief. It's like a fictional universe of every belief sort of mashed together. So all the evil creatures from every major religion in the world are part of hell, part of the bad side, and then every angel and saint and everything from every different religion in the world is put on the heaven side, essentially. And it's not shot for shot. It's not like you have a Jesus Christ character. You just have a lot of good characters that are based on different figures, and a lot of bad characters based on different figures. Obviously, like Mephisto and stuff like that are actual, either factual or mythological, depending on your beliefs, like entities from either the Bible or I don't know what the other Bibles are called. All the other religions, like the Hindu belief and everything like that. So it's a really, I think it's a really, really, really interesting story for just reinterpreting real world religion into a fictional story. And it just, so if you do want to sit down, because the way the story is sort of given to you in Diablo 3, for example, is as you run through the game, you find books on the ground, and when you click on the book, it just starts narrating stuff to you, and you can just keep fighting things. So instead of listening to music, you can just listen to the game things of whatever this narrator is telling you, and the narrator changes based on who wrote the book. And it's like Skyrim, where there's like a billion books, and all the books put together sort of tell the story of the world around you. And I think that's a lot of games do that these days, and I think that's a really strong and effective way of conveying story without being in your face, because there's always that X. You can always say, I don't want to listen to this, but at the same time, if you do want to listen to it, it's very easy to listen to it, because especially in Diablo 3, once you've read the book, it sort of goes into like an index of all the books, so you can just basically say play all and go through like a second time through the game in case you've forgotten the story or missed something along the way. And so, yeah, there's so many good things. Even though Diablo 3 had a lot of like tumultuous beginnings to it, there's a lot of good things in it. But there's also that many more good things in Diablo 2, and I feel like where they went wrong with Diablo 3, they can do right with Diablo 4. So if they announce Diablo 4 alongside an announcement for a remaster or whatever of Diablo 2, they can also say, well, Diablo 2 you guys love, right? Well, Diablo 4, we're borrowing a lot of assets from Diablo 2 because we know you love it so much. And Diablo 2 had its talent system was interesting in the concept that you got a talent point every single level, and there was 99 levels in the game. So when you got to level 99, you essentially had 98 talent points. You could do quests and stuff to get more talent points, and I think at the end of it you had like 115-ish talent points to spend. And if you wanted to, you could put 1 point into each thing, but I think everything in the game, with a very few exceptions, you could put 20 points into. And so each point would make that skill better and better and better. And then when they released Lord of Destruction, which is the expansion for Diablo 2, they introduced synergies to talents. So if you chose Summon Skeleton as a talent for the Necromancer, and then there's Skeleton Mastery. And so Summon Skeleton, when you upgrade the Summon Skeleton talent, it allows you to summon more and more and more skeletons. But when you upgrade the Mastery talent, it allows your skeletons to have more health, do more damage, that kind of thing. And then when they introduced the synergy, it made these two individual talents synergize further with the Skeletal Mage talent. And the Skeletal Mage talent is the same as the Skeleton talent, except you summon Skeletal Mages. And so at any one time, you could have like 10 skeletons around you and 10 skeletal mages around you. All the while, the skeleton talent gives your skeletal mages a little bit more health, and your skeletal mages give your skeletons a little bit more damage. Like, that's how the synergy sort of works with each other. And then, of course, you have the skeletal mastery. I may not be saying it verbatim how it works in the actual game. I haven't played Diablo 2 in many, many years, but that kind of talent system was really, really, really fun. It made you feel super duper powerful when you got up there in levels like level 40, level 50, around there. You started to feel just super duper powerful. And obviously the Diablo 3 iteration of the talent points, obviously it works, but it just, you don't feel supremely powerful with the Diablo 3 system. And so I hope in the Diablo 4 iteration we will see a lot more of Diablo 2 than we will of Diablo 3 in that game.
Yeah, and I can't really talk to that because I never did play Diablo 2. I did play Diablo 3 for, a few hours. I definitely didn't finish the campaign or anything. So it was kind of, it wasn't for me. And that's weird because I absolutely love the Darksiders games, and maybe it's something as simple as being able to play it on a controller versus on a keyboard, and I might give that a try. I'm trying to figure out a way to hook up my Xbox controllers to my laptop. More to come on that, but I do want to be able to play some games with a controller, and maybe Diablo 3. That's the way it's got to be for someone like myself. Because I just kind of it wasn't for me. I wasn't able to really get into it. But maybe if I had my initial experience in Diablo 2, that might have changed everything.
Well, Diablo 3 is also a social game. It helps to have three people who are friends to play with you. Yeah,
fair enough. Let's move quickly to Diablo Immortal. That's kind of the black cat in the room. If Diablo was the big demonic elephant, Diablo Immortal is the oh my goodness. Come on, you of the lion and the bear and the eagle metaphor from a few weeks ago. What's Diablo Immortal?
You've gotten yourself into this mess.
Maybe it's the stinking fish that's kind of in the back corner that nobody really wants to address.
I always say leave this kind of thing to the pros.
Maybe I should have done that. Maybe you should have warned me before I got started.
I didn't know what you were doing.
NetEase is the people that actually made the majority of Diablo Immortal. They're a software developing company that Blizzard hired to make their Diablo Immortal. Now, it's been all but confirmed. Actually, I think it has been flat out confirmed by NetEase that the Diablo Immortal game has been done for some time. Like we're talking probably like 10 months the game has been finished. So I guess the big question, we're not going to dwell on it very long, but the big question is why has Blizzard sat on it for so long? You know, are they doing some internal polish? Are they maybe working out a pay model? Are they holding on to it to avoid bad press? Like, what do you think is going on there?
I think every screenshot I have ever seen remains true to this day, that it looks exactly like other Korean games of that genre over in the eastern side of the world, and I think that hurts it so much. I think that really, 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 and I know it's harder to design a mobile game uniquely as far as like controls go and stuff, but it looks like, it doesn't look like Diablo to me. The art style nothing looks like Diablo to me. So it's like I'm just scrolling through Google images of all the Diablo Immortal stuff I'm finding, and none of it looks like Diablo to me. It's too far different. And so because of that kind of thing, I feel like they might be trying to either delay it or cancel it or recreate it. I don't know, but I feel like they totally wasted their money finishing it. I feel like they should have said, oh, nobody likes this, and we've sort of committed career suicide by announcing it. Let's just destroy it. But they didn't. It's very strange to me that they just kept on with it. I think they will definitely make money off of it, but will they make back the money they spent on it? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a big question. I mean, it's very possible that they didn't make it for North American market, and because they had to pull Diablo 4 last year, they're like, oh shoot, well we've had this panel all prepared and ready, so let's announce something, right? And so obviously it's all in the history books. Diablo Immortal got a pretty terrible reception from the North American crowd.
If it got released as an add-on for Diablo 3, I think, and like a free add-on for the PC release of Diablo 3, I think people would go wild and love it. But as a mobile exclusive, I don't think it has any ground to stand on.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's move on to World of Warcraft. We said before that we could talk at length. Maybe let's try and keep this to like a 20-minute conversation if we can.
Oh no!
This episode is starting to get a little long, so let's see what we can do, shall we?
It's not long. I was late, so we had less time.
Obviously the Mythic Dungeon Invitational is being redone again. Not redone, but we're gonna see this year's Mythic Dungeon Invitational. We're also gonna see this year's Arena World Championships. So we actually get kind of two different flavors of the esports scene as far as World of Warcraft is concerned. So that could be interesting. We're also going to get a 25 years of making World of Warcraft music panel. So that could be interesting if you're into that kind of thing. Of course, the mandatory dev Q&A. We're going to get a WoW update on Saturday at 12 p.m. But that's kind of all of the announced expansions, or the announced panels. But I feel like World of Warcraft is one of the big locks for the unannounced panels at the beginning that we talked about at the beginning of or immediately after the opening ceremonies. So I guess what are we expecting to see from Blizzard, or sorry, from the World of Warcraft team in that unannounced panel?
Obviously the expansion, whatever it may be. I hesitate to guess what the expansion will consist of. but I feel like it might take place in either or both the Shadowlands and the Dragon Isles.
The Dragon Isles. Where's the Dragon Isles?
It's somewhere in the world. They're just going to add it in somewhere. Rathian is currently looking for it, and he's been looking for it for a while.
Yeah, and I did hear that Rathian was going to play some pretty pivotal role in the coming expansion. Or wait a second. What's the is it 8.3 that they're
he's coming back in 8.3.
Yeah, that's on the PTR right now, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. So we do get Rathian in 8.3. And we do get confirmed that 8.3 sees the end of N'Zoth. So we actually get to actually kill the last of the old gods.
Yes.
So I guess my prediction is we're going to get to see a post old gods world and maybe take a deep dive into what that's going to look like.
The reason I think the expansion is the Shadowlands, perhaps, is because it's I'm not sure if Cthulhu dead? We defeated him, but did we kill him?
That's a good question. Did we kill him? I thought that we had, but an old god is almost not a being. It's almost like a force. So when you kill it, quote, I'm air quoting here. When you kill it, does it have a soul? Does it have a spirit that can go to the Shadowlands?
Well, yeah.
And if it does, how terrifying for an agent of chaos to live in the Shadowlands.
As evidenced by Isharaj, who, as a corpse, successfully corrupted and super empowered, what's his face?
Garrosh.
Garrosh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he pulled a Daenerys Stormborn and got all hot and heavy with that old god heart.
That's right. But I would say that if they do have souls and they do arrive in the Shadowlands, perhaps at the end of Battle for Azeroth, N'Zoth in his last breath or something, or maybe Azeroth being the host to all these old gods for so long has been corrupted or something, and some sort of cataclysmic event happens that kills everyone.
Right.
And then everyone wakes up in the Shadowlands where all of the people they've killed before is there, and they're like, uh-oh, now we're outnumbered. And so chaos could ensue pretty radically there.
This is Legion all over again.
Right, and meanwhile there could be a few soul survivors of NPCs who could be Anduin could probably be a survivor, etc., who could essentially save the entire world by mass rezzing everyone or something. But it could be there could be so much potential for revisiting old enemies. Another thing to consider with the old enemy thing is Lich King. There's as there is talk about Rathian for the next patch, there's also talk about Bolvar, who is the current Lich King.
Yes.
He's been out of action for a long time, but they've data mined a lot of assets and conversation and narration and items regarding the Lich King and Death Knights in general.
Well, and did you play a Death Knight in Legion?
No.
So I didn't play very far.
I did play a little bit.
You did?
Yeah.
I think I made it up to 96, 106. Legion got to 110, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I played up to 106 or something. I got into Stormheim, and there was some pretty interesting tidbits. But I've heard other podcasters talk about Bolvar making some pretty aggressive moves, and Arthas actually, during the Death Knight campaign, Arthas appears to you and talks to you, periodically while you're doing this, and even he is concerned about Bolvar and what's going on there. So, I mean, Bolvar
as a human was super righteous.
Well, but he was a far more experienced general. a far better fighter than Arthas ever was.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Arthas, it took the combined might of the Alliance and the Horde to stop Arthas after he had put the helmet on. So, I mean, and he had Frostmourne and oh gosh, what's that orc's name talking to him from
Ner'zhul.
Ner'zhul, yeah. So I mean, Bolvar sounds like he's the scarier option between Arthas and himself. So, I mean, we could have some pretty interesting things going on there.
He's scarier in terms of power and experience, but Bolvar is, in my opinion at least, far and away more neutral than. I don't think he's good or bad. I think he's very, very neutral. I think the righteous mind of Bolvar is sort of equalizing with the evil of Ner'zhul, and it's just made him a very cold but justice-minded individual.
Well, and that sense of justice might just be the thing that sets him on a collision course with the Alliance and the Horde, right?
Right.
You know, trying to bring justice to whatever. Who knows? Maybe Azeroth itself dies, and Bolvar's like, "No, I will. You are a blight on this planet. I'll kill you all," or something.
Right. But there's also
you go ahead.
No, just off the vein of this, to further explain Shadowlands maybe being the expansion, I was also looking at how Arthas is clearly in the Shadowlands. If he's able to visit the current Death Knights as a ghost, he's got to be in there. We know that Sylvanas has what's the word? She has traversed the void a little bit, and maybe that. I mean, I've been trying to figure out what the hell Sylvanas' objective has been since the beginning of Battle for Azeroth. And if she's experienced the void in any capacity, she might be serving either a greater beast, or she might be trying to do everything in her power to avoid that again. I have no idea. But it could be some sort of link to either Shadowlands or something else entirely. But that sort of links in with Azeroth maybe becoming corrupted. I mean, it has a Titan sword in it right now. It had all those old gods all around it forever and ever and ever. There's been a lot of evil permeating Azeroth.
Yeah, poor Azeroth, eh?
Yeah.
But I mean, we know from the lore that that Azeroth is the penultimate Titan.
Right.
She's as of yet unborn. She's yet to take her full physical form, but she is the most powerful Titan out of all of them. So, I mean, yeah, it stands to reason that people that know that would want to get a piece. Now, going back to Sylvanas, so after the last fully rendered cinematic where we see Anduin and Saurfang and Sylvanas and then Makura, we see Sylvanas kind of just fire off into the sky, and that's kind of how she nopes the heck out of there, and basically just leaves an army of Alliance on Orgrimmar's doorstep, and basically says the Horde is nothing, and leaves them to whatever
their own devices. Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, to me, the field has never been riper for some major faction line shakeups, or maybe just the complete blurring of faction lines altogether. Maybe everything fractures along classes instead of factions at this point. That's kind of what I would like to see. I don't know if they're actually even physically able to do that in the coding of the game. There might be something preventing them from doing that. But I mean, honestly, Sylvanas and Bolvar working together to me is absolutely terrifying. I would love to see an expansion where we address that. That would be very intriguing to me, to have Sylvanas and Bolvar. Well, and then we've got Nathanos as well, right? Who's the
lame boyfriend.
No, I know it's a little bit lame, but it's no longer a just a suspicion, right? We know now that Nathanos and Sylvanas are an item.
Right.
So I don't know that adds anything really to the story. Maybe Nathanos is, he's hiding some amazing abilities that we just don't know about yet. I mean,
he never seems to die, that's for sure.
Malfurion was pretty lame right up until he
He chooses when he wants to be lame. And you're like, Malfurion, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Sometimes he's like the most epic boss in the world, and other times you're like, Malfurion, what the hell?
Yeah.
So as far as the factions are concerned for World of Warcraft, though, I saw somebody somewhere saying you can't blur the factions because it's been orcs versus humans forever. That's been the tagline of Blizzard's Warcraft series, but it hasn't been. The first Warcraft game was called Orcs and Humans. It wasn't called Orcs versus Humans, it was Orcs and Humans. And I'm sure they didn't mean that as some sort of foreshadowing for 30 years later, but it does open up the idea of having factions sort of intermingle with each other. So I was trying to think of which factions have any kind of justification for changing teams. And so I wrote down here just a few things that might make sense. And I just gotta go through this real quick here. I apologize for my reading and speaking at the same time. I don't know how I can do that, but I can, so... So we can either have a blurring of factions or a blurring of races between the two factions, or we could have a third faction either be a Lich King faction or a Sylvanas like lone faction. I don't think that'll be a thing because she's more on the side of a villain right now than she is of a hero that people want to follow.
Jeff, I forgot. We got all talking about Sylvanas and Bolvar, and I forgot the the most exciting point. And it might be nothing. It might just be costumes. But every single race and allied race going forward has a Death Knight model.
That's nothing. Okay, let's keep going.
Dun. How can you say that's nothing?
That's going to be Shadowlands stuff, man. We're all going to die, and then Bolvar's going to resurrect us all. So yeah, it could be any number of things. So let's go right back down to... I was hoping to have character creation actually for World of Warcraft be expanded upon to like a la The Sims or Skyrim or Dark Souls, where you can do like everything with the character. But that's just I'm not super excited, or I don't really want that. It's just something that would be neat to have.
I feel like it's a pipe dream at this point that the game's probably a little long in the tooth for them to spend the kind of development time that it would require for that.
Yeah. But it would be nice to be able to like create characters that are different shapes and sizes rather than have every character be super athletic. And I know they introduced the Kulturans as a bit more of a meaty race, but it's kind of sad that you have to add an allied race that's chunky rather than make all your characters alterable in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because when I'm running around as a human mage, I do not want to look like a buff bodybuilder.
No, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So the races I was trying to think of for races that could flip sides are as follows, and I'll elaborate on each of them, but let's just list them all off. Night Elves, Pandaren, Goblins, Forsaken, Tauren, Gnomes, and Blood Elves. So the Night Elves are they kind of make sense because Tyranda's gone insane and super powerful right now, and she resents the Alliance for not helping her. She's been asking for help since the beginning of Battle for Azeroth to retake her homeland, and Anduin just keeps feeding her the same information that, I can't, I'm sorry, not enough manpower. But this time, in the most recent, as far as I'm aware, the most recent iteration of that storyline, she asked for help, Anduin said no, and then, what's-his-face, Gen Greymane decided, I'm sorry, Anduin, for the first time ever, I have to disobey you, I'm going to go help Tyrande. Now, I don't think that means that the Worgen are going to split off. He just sympathizes with her, but Tyrande herself and her faithful night elves are all like, dude, like, we just lost our home, so she might. And it's been proven before in Warcraft 3 and in every night elf related storyline, night elves are really, really, really stubborn, and they're really stuck in their ways. So when Tyrande gets offended, that offended feeling is gonna stick around for a long time.
Well, I mean, they're 10,000 years old plus.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean,
I mean,
you have long memories.
Yeah, and you can say that Sylvanas. This is true, but you know how Sylvanas is super duper grudgy. She doesn't really have love in her life at all. And you could say that that's because Arthas, the way Arthas killed her and wrenched her soul back from the afterlife back into her body, kind of thing. Well, not, you know. You could say that process tore her soul up so badly that she's become like bitter and despicable. But she's also an elf that's been alive for, like you said, thousands of years. I don't know how old Sylvanas specifically is, but because she's an elf, it sort of conveys the same sort of aspect of stubbornness and narrow-mindedness that Tyrande has.
Well, and on that note, because of how long-lived they are, how long have the Night Elves actually been part of the Alliance? Not that long.
No, not at all.
Not that long. So I mean, when you
since
measure
the Third War, yeah,
which is what, 20 years?
20 or 25, yeah.
When you measure that against how long they live, like it's the same as you and I having a handshake and then, you know, I'll help you reshingle your roof this weekend, right? And then all of a sudden I'm supposed to, you know, bend over backwards for you because you told me to. Oh, hi, King Jefferson. No, right? So yeah, I could definitely see them maybe not joining the Horde. That's pretty extreme, but departing from the Alliance, definitely.
Well, yeah, I'll definitely get into this actually a little bit more. So let's actually move on from that. I want to cover gnomes next because there's such extreme emphasis on the Night Elves' lands being retaken. Meanwhile, no one cares at all about Gnomeregan. We've given a few tries to retaking Gnomeregan, but at some point the Alliance just said, "Oh, sorry, gnomes, we can't take it," and just gave up on it. And so, even though it's a dungeon, so it sort of conveys the impression that there's an ongoing struggle with retaking Gnomeregan. There's no chronological conclusion to it, because if you go in there with all of your quests, you defeat the boss of the place. You basically commit genocide in there with all the leopard gnomes and stuff, all the trogs, everything. And at the end of it, when you complete it all, Gnomeregan does not become a purified, vacant homestead for the gnomes. Even after the Cataclysm remodeling of all the different zones, we still don't have Gnomeregan. And it's just this constant thing that the gnomes have been like, okay, well, we're sort of on the back burner because we're not a very popular race compared to the Forsaken or the Night Elves or whatever. So, you know, story is sort of, you know, out the window for us. But at the same time, if I was a gnome, I would totally feel resentment that this pretentious Night Elf thinks that her home should be fought for, even though it got burned to the ground. It's not even recoverable anymore. But the gnome's home is right there. It's right next to Ironforge, and nobody's like lifting a finger to try to help them. I can definitely see a lot of resentment being built up, and not to mention, I mean, dwarves were clearly part of the Alliance in Warcraft 3. They were part of the human race faction. Gnomes, not really. There were a couple gnomes, but they're like, I can't really think of any gnomes. But like, dwarves and humans are definitely strong allies. Gnomes just felt sort of shoved in for World of Warcraft as allies of the Alliance. I feel like they should have being given the same treatment as goblins were at the very beginning of WoW. Like in WoW Classic, goblins are just neutral dudes.
Right.
They do have a few more, like Ratchet is placed right in the Barrens, which is of course Horde land. It's a bit more close to Horde factions. It makes a little bit more sense that they lean on the side of the Horde more than they'd lean on the side of the Gnome or the Alliance. But the same can be said for the Gnomes. They're right in Dwarven land. They would lean toward being friends with dwarves more than they would with any Horde faction, but they wouldn't necessarily have to be friendly. They could just be neutral. So that would sort of rely on a little bit of retconning to try to make the gnome storyline a little believable with their resentment towards the Alliance, because that has never been talked about before, but it's still something that's entirely possible. Mm-hmm. It sounded like you were going to say something.
Well, I was just thinking about how that, I was trying to find a way to make that work with Mechagon, right? And how terrifying the gnomes have become since Mechagon, right? Because they were always like the joke race of the Alliance, right? They kind of just, gnome punting is a thing because people don't respect the gnome, despite the fact that it's just a character model, right? A gnome warrior can be every bit as terrifying as a Tauren warrior, despite the fact that a gnome is the size of a Tauren's hoof.
Right.
But since Mechagon, now I haven't played it extensively, but I've heard people talk about how terrifying the gnomes are and the mecha gnomes, and how their ingenuity has progressed so far that their intellect makes them a match for anybody and then some. That it's a real danger if they decide that they want out. Like, I mean, they pose a real threat, I suppose, is what I'm getting at.
Right. So moving on, Pandaren. Pandaren, the whole expansion of Mists of Pandaria is wrapped around the fact that Pandarens are pretty emotionally stable. Some of them are a little bit more fiery than others, and some of them a little bit more calm than others. But their whole range of emotional stability is very narrow. So or maybe broad, depending on your perspective. But they don't seem to like extremes. They don't seem to like extreme violence. And as far as the Horde is concerned, there's a lot of extreme violence happening. And as far as the Alliance is concerned, even though they constantly tout on honor and righteousness and all this kind of thing, they're very violent as well. Like, the second Sylvanas threw the stone, they were like, okay, we're all in. And it went from total peace, not total peace, but very, very, tenuous peace between the two to all-out war in an instant. And I feel like the Pandaren can either become completely separate, neutral, or they would be, let's separate from the Horde or separate from the Alliance or whatever. I feel like the Pandaren can be kind of, as much as they chose which faction they wanted to belong to, I feel like they might 100% choose one or the other from this point. Just because there's just been so much intensity from both factions that it's kind of up in the air with Pandaren for me.
Honestly, I'm not. I'll be brutal here, but the Pandaren as a race mean nothing to me. I don't care about them whatsoever.
Did you play much of Mists?
Oh yeah, I played the hell out of Mists.
That's interesting. I like the Pandaren.
I never really got a Pandaren character very high, and it's funny because the exact thing that I want for every other class or every other race, the ability to kind of be a double agent, choose either one or the other side. That's the exact reason I think why I don't have respect for the Pandaren. I just don't. I don't know. I'm not invested in them. I don't like them. Maybe that's it. I don't buy it. Maybe that's why.
It's possible.
See, the Forsaken, I could see it. Even being willing to choose both sides, I can make an argument for that. I don't buy the Pandaren.
Goblins. They had a huge hand in weaponizing the Azerite, and they were a neutral faction to start. But the fact that they had such a huge hand in Azerite might sort of, even though they aren't strictly aligned with Sylvanas, it was their boss that was aligned with her, it might sort of ostracize them from their compatriots, right? Like it even though goblins are kind of goofy doofuses like gnomes are for the Alliance, there's a lot of seriousness behind their actions, and I don't know how. Again, the story definitely leans on the more popular races, and goblins aren't necessarily the more popular race, but so they might just get that this whole controversy with goblins might be just brushed under the rug. But I feel like the fact that they had such a big hand in Azerite sort of hurts their impact with the Horde, at least. And as much as the gnomes might be, the gnomes and the goblins might be able to be like a dual neutral faction of some sort, because they're rivals of each other for one thing. They're not necessarily enemies of each other, but if you do any goblin quest, they're always insulting gnomes, and if you do any gnome quest, they're always insulting goblins. They have this fierce competitiveness with each other that might sort of form an alliance between the two. So it might become like a twin race of some sort. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be pretty terrifying. I mean, you do see Bixby and Schnozzlepot, or whatever the heck the goblin's name is.
Oh my god.
I don't know what his name is, but there's like this weird romance going on between a goblin and a gnome in the Anduin story, the one by Christy Golden between Legion and Battle for Azeroth. They do explore that, and maybe it's not I don't remember which story it is, but anyways, you do finally eventually
with
get to see the game.
Or Gallywix?
No, neither.
Those are the leaders.
No, it's not a leader.
Oh, you said the boss guy.
I didn't say boss guy at all.
I heard boss guy. Someone said
it. So we do kind of see this a romantic relationship forming between a gnome and a goblin. So I suppose there is the potential, at least, for them to work together and maybe even come together and create a master race of tinkers. But I think that more likely than the goblins defecting from the Horde, I think it's more likely that the war just tapped out all of their financial resources, and the Horde can no longer pay them, and so they'll leave just because the Horde can't afford to keep them.
It's possible, yeah. So another faction is the Tauren. The Tauren are, the much less, the seemingly much less violent alliance might just be a more welcoming atmosphere to the Tauren, especially considering like Bane's interactions, let's say, with Sylvanas. Even though Sylvanas is sort of gone from the Horde now, he might still have like a sour taste in his mouth from that experience. And where orcs and trolls have been like, just like humans and dwarves have been like die-hard friends from the beginning, Tauren and gnomes were kind of the outside like later addition to that team. And I feel like the Tauren has always been a weird addition. They're like the metaphorical, how would you put this? They were like they're the line of morality for the Horde, because they're so calm and they're so like, they're like Mother Earth, Mother Earth, Mother Earth, and they're all like spiritual, I guess you could say. That it just makes them, I don't know even how to explain it. It feels like they're like an alien addition to the Horde, because I'm sure there are super violent Tauren. I'm not super versed on Tauren lore, but it just they just feel out
the
of
Grim
place to
Totem,
me
right?
in the
The
Horde.
Grim Totem are they're pretty violent.
That is
Right,
true.
we're talking Magatha and
They're-
her ilk.
That yeah, that is true.
But the Grim Totem aren't really, they're a
Horde.
tribe, but they're not really horde.
Yeah. But just to help this process along, let's just move on to Blood Elves. Blood Elves are, of course, High Elves, and High Elves are okay. How would you say this? All Blood Elves are High Elves, but not all High Elves are Blood Elves, I guess is the
Right.
right way to put it.
Yeah.
But more, if Blood Elves, and the thing is, this is a personal gripe with lore from Warcraft 3 translated into World of Warcraft. But in Warcraft 3, Kael'thas isn't a bad guy. He just
Yeah.
he departs from the Alliance because the human who was in charge of him was a super duper racist. That's the only reason he departed from the Alliance. He wasn't evil. He didn't hate the Alliance. He just he departed. And then in World of Warcraft, he was like this super corrupt evil man. And Kael'thas wasn't ever one of my favorites. I liked him, but he wasn't ever one of my favorite characters. But I feel like there was such a massive disservice put to him. Now, I'm not sure if it's ever going to be appropriate to retcon that in any capacity, but I'm sure a lot of Blood Elves. I was gonna say I'm sure a lot of Blood Elves are friends with, or were friends with, some Alliance people because they're so close to Lordaeron. But I'm not sure if that's even true because elves have always been sort of secluded. But
Yeah.
it would make a continent versus continent arrangement a little bit more favorable.
Yes.
It would be. I think Blood Elves, just like Forsaken, there's no reason that the Blood Elves chose the Horde over the Alliance, other than Kael'thas's bad ties with the Alliance. But Kael'thas turned out to be evil, so that shouldn't have a leg in this race. So the reason why the Blood Elves chose the Horde should have nothing to do with Kael'thas's experiences. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So they should
I wonder
either
if
be
the Blood Elves are responding to Arthas by joining the Horde. They see Arthas as alliance, so they just join the Horde that way.
but they aligned with Illidan, and Illidan was technically Alliance. I mean, elf more than anything, but Alliance. I don't know.
You're talking, Burning Crusade. But that wasn't all of them though. That was only a very small group. You're talking about the demon hunters that Illidan formed.
I'm talking about Warcraft 3.
Oh, okay.
Kael'thas and his elves join Illidan.
Yeah, I'm fuzzy on the lore of Warcraft 3. It's been a long time.
Oh, well, he gets help from what's her face, the Naga Queen lady.
Ashara.
No, not Ashara. She's the boss of Serpentine Cavern in Burning Crusade. I can't remember her name.
Lady Vash.
Lady Vaj.
Lady Vash. Yeah.
She's a servant of Illidan, and she recruits Kael'thas to Illidan's cause.
Okay.
But Illidan, I'm sorry, I don't want to divert. That whole storyline is sad to me. For how it converted into World of Warcraft, anyway. So Blood Elves are very neutral to me. I feel like they. And I don't want to say I want them on the Alliance. I don't care what faction they belong to.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that they 100% naturally belong to the Horde. I think that they're very neutral, as are the Forsaken. Now Sylvanas has been always, her entire life has been extremely hateful of many things, or her entire undead life, I guess you could say. She's been just extremely hateful of everything. Arthas died. It didn't seem to bring her any joy at all. Bolvar took over. All she wanted to do was get those angel ladies to like breathe life into her people, but she doesn't even seem to have any pride in her people anymore because her people called themselves part of the Horde, and she said the Horde are nothing. And you're like, well, what's this weird disconnect? Even her most loyal guards have sort of been like, what the heck?
Yeah, but it's not even. Sylvanas has always been for the Forsaken. Even yeah, she was part of the Horde out of convenience, but she was always pro Forsaken. And in that cinematic, she says 3 things. She says, the Alliance are nothing. The Horde are nothing. And then she looked back at, like, Orgrimmar, which is filled with the Forsaken, and she says, all of you are nothing. Right? And so she right there, she's like, that was a slap. That stung. Right? They always had Sylvanas in their pocket. They knew that, the rest of the world is going to hell in a handbasket, but we've got Sylvanas, and now they don't.
Right. So I would say also concerning the I'm forgetting his name now. Jaina's brother.
Tendril, something like that.
That can't be it. That doesn't sound right at all.
Let's see here. Jaina's brother.
Derek.
There.
You were close.
I was close.
Yeah. You just threw together a combination of letters.
That sounded vaguely human.
Yeah. So her brother is undead, and he's a very strong inference that there's a lot of Forsaken out there that are like, I wish I could go rejoin my family. And even though there are a lot of humans and living out there that are like, you Forsaken, I don't care if they're family, they're dead to me. There are still that many more that are saying, hey, I wish I could reunite with my family, but they belong to the Horde now.
Well, and I feel like that's what Christy Golden was doing when she put that part in the story, in that book between the expansions. There was this period or this kind of almost like a white flag where a whole slew of the Forsaken started rejoining their families. Well, not rejoining their families, but rather Sylvanas agreed and Anduin agreed to let Kalia Menethil and what the heck is his name? Alonsis Fowl to kind of join the deceased Lordaeron humans, which are the undead, together, or the Forsaken rather, together with their living counterparts or their living family members, surviving family members. And some of them really did recoil. They're like, no, we don't want to do this, especially after they saw what their family member had become. They're like, that's not my family. And they recoiled and, I don't know, ran away screaming or rejected them. But some of them really did. They still had some tenderness. There was some reconciliation happening. So I've long held that on top of the fact that Kalia Menethil was killed in that exchange, and she was raised by both light and shadow magic. She was raised back from the dead by both light and shadow magic, which has never been done before, to my awareness. So we have Derek Proudmoore, and we have a potential faction leader in Kalia Menethil to lead the Light Forged Undead, is what they were kind of calling it before. But it might just be that Kalia Menethil is the successor to Sylvanas to lead the Forsaken, and she's going to bring them either into a neutral faction or into, God forbid, even into the Alliance.
Right.
I think that'd be really cool, and that would open up so much more story devices or lore to explore. You know, now that our big bads are dropping like flies, we need to explore internally, right? There's not so much lore that's happening outside of us anymore. You know, there's not many old gods left. There's not many big bads left. So any future that the game has to come from within, I feel.
Right. So, story aside, there's a few other like mechanical or whatever you want to call them additions that I would like to see in the game. One thing could be a fourth spec for every class.
Ooh.
I think that would really open up so many possibilities. It's a huge, huge venture, but it's also exceptionally exciting. I think it would have a lot of implications you could make. I mean, right now we have the tank class, the DPS class, and the healers class. They could make a new or role. They could make an entirely different role if they introduced a fourth spec for each class. Maybe not for the druid because they're already kind of leaps ahead in that regard. But I think there's a lot of potential for adding specs that are like a support spec of some sort, that isn't necessarily like along the lines of like a discipline priest or something like that sort of does two things at once or is something else and altogether. I think is very interesting.
Yeah, somebody that maybe gives very short-term buffs, right? Movement speed or damage increase or damage mitigation.
Right.
Pass it around and able to do some similar to a healer, able to do some damage, if the situation calls for it, or if they've got nothing else to do. Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing to explore.
Another idea was class hybridization. Somehow, not necessarily making brand new classes, but like they have the allied races have some sort of like sister class to the paladin or sister class to the warrior or something that's just a little bit not necessarily. I don't think that you could do a fourth spec and a class hybridization. You would have to do one or the other, but the class hybridization would allow you to do a warrior with a mage and have some sort of like spell sword, that kind of thing. With both the fourth spec idea and the class hybridization idea, I think the possibilities are kind of endless at this point.
Yeah, they are.
They are. It really opens up a lot of possibilities, and it makes it a lot more exciting to look forward to. I remember when they first released that very first trailer for Wrath of the Lich King, and they were talking about how you needed to have a max level paladin, specifically a paladin, that you had to sacrifice for him to become a Death Knight.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a cool concept, but then everyone rejected it because nobody wanted to sacrifice their paladin. And then they were like, okay, well it'll be any max level character, and then it still got rejected because nobody wanted to sacrifice that character. And I think it makes sense that you don't want to sacrifice, but at the same time, it takes away from the mystique of this hero class. Class hybridization, fourth spec, that kind of thing, I think would be very cool to see.
Yeah.
So that's all of our BlizzCon stuff out of the way, and I just wanted to say one little side bit before we end the episode. At the very beginning of this episode, I was talking about how I sort of blitzed through Ocarina of Time, and I hadn't played the game for a number of years, I would say. Well, maybe a year or two. Anyway, it had been a while, and I started thinking about how the plot plays out in Ocarina of Time. Because of course you start as a kid, you earn those three things, and then you go into the Temple of Time, you become an adult, you get the Ocarina of Time, which has a lot of powers attached to it as well. You go around to all the temples, you defeat all the bosses, get all your upgrades, then you beat Ganondorf, and that's it. At the end, after you beat Ganondorf, you give the Ocarina of Time back to Zelda, and she reverts you back to a kid. And then, of course, Majora's Mask starts, and you're still a kid. It's almost immediately after Ocarina of Time that Majora's Mask starts. So I was thinking, what if Ocarina of Time started outside the Temple of Time with adult Link, as if he had just become an adult for the first time, but based on placement and narration, the player would not know that he had just been a child. So the story would advance as he completed the various temples, ultimately culminating in his defeat of Ganondorf. But then in the following cutscene, he returned the Ocarina of Time to Zelda and reverts back to a child, confusing the player. He wakes up in Kokoro village to a fairy telling him to get a move on. He speaks to that big tree. He learns of the plot that he's already solved, of course, with Ganondorf and all that. He obtains his 3 gems to enter the Temple of Time. He meets Zelda and Ganondorf. He retrieves the Master Sword. At this point, you could do one of 2 things. You could just end the game here, roll credits, and allow the player to puzzle out the circular paradox that Link is stuck in. Or you can continue the story where he re-experiences his adult adventure that has changed somehow. So you get to the end, like it's different from your first adult adventure. It would have to be a longer game. So it would be different from his first adventure. He gets through it to the end. He bests Ganondorf yet again, and realizes that Ganondorf's last laugh was locking Link in time, giving the player the choice to return the Ocarina of Time, or to continue his infinite cycle of just going through over and over and over, reverting to a kid each time he beats Ganondorf. I think it would obviously add a lot more plot thickening devices, I would say. Well, as far as story is concerned, it would be just like a lot of insanity ensues, because it goes from a pretty simple story to a super complex one, because it's a conception. Link just keeps falling further and further behind in time, and he's like, how do I get out of this?
So you need to pitch this idea to Japanese animators, and they'll make a anime out of it. And you'll be rich. Do it.
Well, somebody's going to steal my idea because this is on the podcast. What have I done?
Oh, shoot. Shame on you.
I thought it was a unique idea because as I was playing, I'm like, man, Link could very easily be trapped in an eternal circle here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, time paradox. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that about does it for us, for me, for Jeff. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, if you like our content, please give us a thumbs up, share us with your friends. You got a question or comment, throw that in the YouTube comment section below, and we will do our level best to reply. Again, if you want to reach us, you can email us at just tldrpodcast@gmail.com. Our videos can be found at youtube.com/tldrpodcast. And finally, you can tweet us at podcasttldr. And also tune in next time for our post-Blizzcon episode, where we will be talking about everything that happened and laughing uproariously at how incredibly wrong we were. So that's the end for us. Thank you, Jeff, so much for joining me here, and we will see you next week.
See you later.